Welcome back, everybody, into Bill's Chat. I am Josh McCarty. With me, as always, is Luca. Luca, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing good. It was a long weekend for myself. Had a long delayed housewarming over the weekend with family and friends coming over, and it led into a very late night last night. So we're dragging ass a little bit, full transparency, but doing good. And honestly, I think the thing that enjoy the most right now, Josh, is that my least favorite thing about all of sports and football and specifically is over, and that being the preseason. Thank goodness the useless football is over, and we can now just look forward to the games that matter, the actual fun, and the stuff that makes us the diehard fans that we are of this lovely sport that you and I like to sit down once a week, sometimes even twice a week, to talk all things Bills specific football. And yeah, I'm very, very much happy that the Shane Buechele for 60 minutes performances are in the rear view mirror for 2025.
You look good, though, Luca. Are we sure he shouldn't give Josh Allen a run for his money? Um, I'm in a bad mood tonight, Luca. I mean, we'll get into the preseason game. We'll get into. I honestly don't think the Bills have many difficult roster decisions to make. I feel like the Tyrell Savers conversation is over. I don't know how you keep this guy off the roster compared to like what we're talking about. Elijah Moore, Curtis Samuel, who can't get healthy, just keep six wide receivers and you're fine. If those guys have to make the roster or put Samuel on IR, some of the other positions, like we talked about in the spring, could somebody push Damar Hamlin off the roster? Well, when the other veteran you bring in, Derek Forrest, comes in and can't play, that's not going to happen. So that's probably not going to be a situation. And then you have, Maxwell Harrison nursing an injury, this mystery Tre'Davious White injury. So some of these cornerback spots that we thought were going to be precious are now going to be necessary. So I don't necessarily think that the Bills are going to have that many tough end of roster decisions. I suppose there's going to be some drama in quarterback too, but it sure feels like it's going to be Mitch Trubisky. And whether or not they keep a true kick returner in Codrington or go with somebody who has multiple roles like a KJ Hamler, who's a hard knocks darling, or, LaVisca Chenault, who I would kind of be, I would find that to be pretty doubtful at this point. But why I'm in a bad mood, and it's a larger conversation than just who the fifth defensive tackle is on the roster, Luca. But on Sunday night, Tom Pelissero from NFL Network reported that the Bills are in talks to sign Jordan Phillips. Since that point in time, Elena Getson, Getzenberg from ESPN, the Bills beat reporter, has confirmed that he has signed. And then Ryan Talbot from New York Upstate, Shout Buffalo Bills podcast with Matt Perino, has confirmed that this is not for a practice squad spot. This is for a spot on the 53-man roster. So much to unpack with this Jordan Phillips news and why it's put me in a bad mood. But Luca, when all of this came across your timeline and you realized that Jordan Phillips was not only on the Bills' radar, but now he's on the Bills roster and he's on the Bills 53, what went through your mind?
Uh, an admittance of failure, and it's the panic. Oh shit! We've now seen what we have done with that unit, and we're not comfortable with it. We thought we would be. We thought by dedicating a lot of assets to it right out the gate, we'll be okay. And obviously, when I keep saying we and stuff, I'm kind of in the front office mindset. It's like, hey, we spend all our blue chip assets for defensive line and defense in general. But obviously, with rounds 2, 3, and 4 all dedicated to that line, it's like, hey, we're really bolstering it up with youth and promising youth that emphasis on athleticism, of course. It's one of those things where they believed, it would be okay. We'll be able to get through it, especially with that whole rotation dynamic that the Bills are notorious for in the McDermott era. Well, all of a sudden, when even one of those picks being Deion Walker, who gets random comps to Jordan Phillips, happens, but then all of a sudden you're signing Jordan Phillips for your fourth time off the street for a guaranteed roster spot, that is a detriment to all of it. And there's multiple things that you, for lack of a better term, fucked up on to get yourself to this point. The primary thing to me is they went into this world believing that Dwayne Carter could evolve after an injury with only showing maybe a handful of meaningful snaps of anything on tape, and unfortunately was a cataclysmic failure this year so far, to the point where it feels like it's pretty much inevitable that that is the spot that Phillips will be taking for week one. It's pretty widely believed. When you saw Dwayne Carter playing fourth quarter snaps in Tampa, that that's a writing on the wall moment. That's not good. And mind you, not playing good snaps, like not being impactful, not doing anything. That's you're not long for the roster, it feels like. And then from there, the second layer of it all is all those draft picks, the assets you just acquired through the draft to bolster that D line. None of them are showing you anything that gives you hope that it will be able to make day one impact, or, through this first season impact that you could trust. And so you're just going to an old vet that realistically is probably not going to be able to provide you a whole lot, but you at least know what you're getting out of them. And you feel like that is enough of value to have in here over a Dayon Walker or a TJ Sanders being out there for those same snaps, if he's taking the Dwayne Carter spot, of course. And I even said it to you off air. The last thing that also went in my head was Larry Ogunjobi, to me, was on the fringe of making this roster because of his 6-game suspension. The best thing that happened for him making this roster, in my opinion, was the signing of Jordan Phillips. That, to me, speaks volumes for where they believe what they saw in the field and where it stands, and that they don't feel comfortable with any of that. And on top of it, they're just going to want to go to a veteran presence rather than these rookies, because they're not giving enough juice right out the gate. And like, I want to just end this point as well with, it's not on the rookies and it's not their fault that it's this situation either. They are rookies. This is typical. This is almost, I don't want to say expected, because of course you find gems, there's things that can happen, but ultimately it's like, this shouldn't have been a surprise to Bean, McDermott, and everyone else. Like, they are rookies. Rookies have a learning curve to them. Hopefully it's quick, but ultimately everyone takes it, differently at their own pace. And especially it feels like in a McDermott defense and what has always been run, it's harder for rookies to truly jump in from day one and make this team better and make the defense better, because there's just a lot to it. Defensive line feels a little bit more on the simple side, but at the same time, you're one of 11 out there. You need to understand everyone's job. And it just feels like rookies don't succeed quickly in this defense. It never has. So to all of a sudden expect something differently when you are the front office itself from all of these rookies, that's a tall order for them to kind of pick it up in 6 weeks or so, and really make sure that they will be ready come week one for the Ravens when they're playing Sunday night in Orchard Park. It's not fair to them to make it feel like they are the failures, because they're not. It's the failure is strictly on the front office and the coaching staff believing that that was the way and the only way to go about it and everything would be okay. Signing Jordan Phillips was the ultimate sign of, holy shit, we might have fucked up.
I think it's important to understand what Luka's saying too. Like, we're well aware that TJ Sanders and Dayon Walker have had flashes in camp and in preseason games, and we're both fairly excited about their future. I still think TJ Sanders is going to be a very nice rotational piece for the Bills and add a nice pass rushing presence to this team in the future. And Dayon Walker is just an absolute like ballerina at his size, and he does comp to Jordan Phillips, where it's like a big man shouldn't be able to move like that. And I think it's exciting to think about what these guys could mean for the future, but we're talking about 2025. We're talking about a team that was a fourth down conversion away from making it to the Super Bowl. And we're talking about a team that needs to win now. And that's the distinction is, can you count on these rookies, second round, third round, fourth round picks to put you over the hump? And the Bills went into this offseason, Luca, clearly designating the defensive line as their point of emphasis. Before the draft even happened, they signed Michael Hoyt and Larry Ogunjobi to about $7 million APY each. Ogunjobi 1-year deal. Now, then word came out that both those guys suspended for 6 games. Oops. And, we've all been impressed with what we've seen from Michael Hoyt. I think there's a realistic possibility that by the end of the season, he supplants AJ Epinesa as the third edge on this team. But right now, 6 games are going to go by, including one against the Ravens, and he's not going to be there. You also have one run through the entire AFC East without him there. Then you look at the draft, and they spent their second round pick, a third round pick, and a fourth round pick on the defensive line with TJ Sanders, Landon Jackson, and then Deion Walker. That doesn't even mention the fact that they signed Joey Bosa in free agency for $12 million. And they went out and gave Gregory Rousseau $80 million over the next 4 years. They absolutely poured assets into this position because when the Chiefs went out there piecemealing an offensive line together, could not run an offense against the Houston Texans, barely escaped that game when CJ Stroud couldn't complete a forward pass, and barely could run an offense against the Philadelphia Eagles and looked overmatched against their defensive line. They went up and down the field on the Bills' defensive line, and Brandon Beane said, I have to fix that. And all these assets spent this offseason to fix it. And here it is, August 24th, and they're signing Jordan Phillips and guaranteeing him a roster spot on the defensive line. It's got to be an admission of failure. And I like Jordan Phillips. He's a fun player in Bills history in this Josh Allen era. You know, we all love the shot of him and Shaq Lawson at the end of that Cowboys game, making fun of Zeke Elliott. That was a pillar moment in this Bills build, that Thanksgiving game in Dallas. The 2019 version of Jordan Phillips was fantastic. But it's 2025. He hasn't been that player for a long time. And the fact that the Bills, who are in the Super Bowl window, are tapping back into Jordan Phillips, it's so frustrating. There has to be a better idea. And guess what, folks? When we're done with the Jordan Phillips conversation, we're going to pivot right to is Tre'Davious White healthy enough to start at cornerback, or are they going to have to go back to Dane Jackson? What year is it? Are we trying to stop the Chiefs with new ideas, or do we have to keep going back with the old ideas? It was kind of a meme a couple years ago when they dusted off Cole Beasley and John Brown, and those were their ideas to fix the wide receiver position. And now here we are in 2025, 1 yard away from winning the AFC Championship, and it's Jordan Phillips, Tre'Davious White, and Dane Jackson. I don't know. The whole thing. The fifth defensive tackle doesn't have to matter a lick. Jordan Phillips may not even play a snap for this team, but it's the idea that after this entire offseason that Brandon Beane went out and looked under every rock, every corner of the world to find defensive line help. All that work they put in this offseason, Luka, and it's August 24th, and you can already put in ink this version of Jordan Phillips as one of those defensive line spots. The word unacceptable comes to mind.
Unacceptable does come to mind. It's one of those, your point of old, basically it's kind of like old tricks for new results. That's the hope. You know, you're going back to old reliable things, expecting something different, or at least something that'll get you by, to get you to a place that those things, even at their better points, were not able to provide you. Now you're, as you even put it, 2019 Jordan Phillips was great. We're 6 years later now going into the season. You can't expect, of course, that same thing. And he has not shown that he is that same thing for a long time. There's a reason Jordan Phillips is just sitting around on the street for multiple years now for him to just come back to the Bills whenever they call. And that kind of loyalty is great in a person, but when that is happening, like you said, it's not necessarily because I need that fifth defensive tackle to play meaningful for those 5 snaps a game he might get. It's more of what that message actually shows us for everything that's led up to this point. And that is the problem. And even for the corner 2 spot, where it felt like we were staring down the barrel of Trey White being that corner 2 again, opposite of Christian Benford, and then he has this injury and whatever is going on with that. You drafted Max Harrison. Unfortunately, he gets an injury, but it feels like hopefully he should be back sooner rather than later. But if that doesn't happen, then you are going to Dane Jackson or, Jamarcus Ingram And it's like these are guys that have been around for a while, and you're not doing anything different to correct these things that have been there that you even have acknowledged needs correction. And that's the problem. That is what's so hard to swallow when it comes to being an outsider and seeing these things happen from Bean. And we will hear, I'm sure, from Bean in the coming days about the signing of Jordan Phillips once the roster's down to 53, why the decisions were made that were. And it's just like, what are we doing? What you tell us that there's a plan and you have done all this work and you're doing your jobs. And I believe that they are doing what they believe is the best job they can. But it's hard to think that it's actually good when you're just running into these same things. And the kicker on top of it too is the defensive line resources. It's like maybe Joey Bosa does work out and all of a sudden getting out of LA keeps him healthy. What if? You can't depend on that, though. You can't expect that. There's too much of a track record that tells you that's not going to happen. Joshua Palmer is similar. Like, we have a mutual acquaintance, Josh, that is a diehard Chargers fan. And I love when he just makes a comment. So when's the scheduled Palmer injury? When is he going to have his big breakout game that's going to give you hope? And then the following week will be that injury that will hold him out for 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it is. That's historically what he does. That's and like, it sucks for a player like him because there is a potential that could have been tapped into, but unfortunately, that's just the track record he has, and that's the reality of the player. So when those are the things you've used as your high-end solutions to problems that you have seen, and then also then filled it in with rookies that you're now acknowledging, holy shit, they might not be able to rotate and give us as good of snaps as we need. So let's get something that's all reliable in Jordan Phillips. And or corner 2 is a problem. We drafted Max Harrison, but if he goes down, it's either Trey White or Dane Jackson we got to throw in there. It's like, what? No, something else has to exist. Something else has to be there because you've seen enough from these people, even in their better days, as I said before, that it wasn't good enough. So now why years later are you expecting anything different? I don't even know how to truly wrap my head around everything that's taking place. But then to kind of subside stuff, and I don't know if it's me telling it to myself or, I genuinely believe what I'm about to say, but it's a weird thing to say. As long as that guy is healthy and under center, we're still winning 12 plus games. We still have a penciled in date in January with Kansas City. That's the craziest thing of all of this, Josh. I am confident in saying that kind of statement. And you can be frustrated all you want. The problem, though, is the inevitable thing is if we do have that date with Kansas City in January and we are in that tight game situation, and all of a sudden you see 97 trotting out there with his big puffy jacket under his jersey or whatever he's trying to do under his pads to play that game, I'm not feeling great about it. And I'm wondering, how the hell did we get in this situation where Jordan Phillips is playing this damn snap right now? Like, why are we here? That is the problem.
Jordan Phillips trying to beat Creed Humphrey before Xavier Worthy beats Dane Jackson is not the way many of us drew up the 2026 playoffs. Hopefully that is not the Bills' reality, but you actually sparked something in my brain because you were ranting about how could they count on rookies? Counting on rookies is a bad plan. And, we talked about the defensive linemen and now it's Jordan Phillips. Well, cornerback, exactly the same thing. It was Maxwell Harrison, granted a first round pick, but it's not like he was a top 10 pick. This isn't Travis Hunter, folks. This is Maxwell Harrison. And it's like, okay, if he doesn't work out, it's Tre'Davious White, who was on 2 different teams last year, or Dane Jackson. And there's a reason why this podcast was pounding the table to sign Jair Alexander a couple months ago. And it's not because we believe that Jair Alexander is still an elite cornerback, but it's because he signed in Baltimore for $4 million. And that's less than Larry Ogunjobi counts against your cap right now. Jair Alexander could be starting opposite Christian Benford until Maxwell Harrison gets back. And we caught a lot of heat for bringing that up. It's like, oh, we got Tre'Davious White. Oh, we got Dane Jackson. And it was, you can't assume the rookie is going to be fine. When you're a championship caliber team, you don't draft rookies as solutions. You just don't. You draft rookies as first year bonuses, but like over the next 2, 3, 4 years, it's the Terrell Bernard thing. Terrell Bernard was not a solution year one, not even close. By year 2, 3, 4, he's a functional cog in this machine. That you can't, I mean, what were the Bills expecting to happen with this draft class? To hit on their first, second, third, and fourth round picks? That would be amazing considering their recent draft history. But I don't want to sit here and steer the conversation too far off the road. I want to give, Brandon Beane is very good at his job. I do believe that. I just think this offseason there was a misuse of resources, and it could all still work out. Look, Joshua Palmer could end up just evolving into Nico Collins, and all of a sudden change of scenery, change of medical staff, getting with Josh Allen. Like, you can talk yourself into it, fine. We talked ourselves into Elijah Moore a couple months ago, and he's at risk of not making this team. Um, there's a Dwayne Carter conversation that needs to probably happen too, because God, Luka, I don't want to bring up the Xavier Worthy piece, because I swear, folks, I am not living in a Xavier Worthy fear bunker. I think Luka's higher on the player than I am. But I think Luka's just more annoyed that why would you give him to the Chiefs? Like, if you're going to trade
Yeah.
away from that guy, like, give him to the Jaguars. Um, it's not that I think Xavier Worthy is the second coming of Terrell Owens or Jerry Rice. It's the fact that when you traded away from, whether it was Xavier Worthy, you traded away from the right to pick first of that group of receivers, whether it was Xavier Worthy, Ladd McConkey, Keon Coleman, A.D. Mitchell, the dude that went to Carolina, who my mind is
Xavier Legette.
thank you, Xavier Legette. That group, you gave the right away twice, once to Kansas City, once to Carolina. You did so because you moved up into the third round to ultimately take Dwayne Carter. Now, we don't know anything sitting here again on August 24th. We can assume that this does not speak well of Dwayne Carter standing on the team. That's all we're doing right now. Dwayne Carter was okay, you didn't get Xavier Worthy. You got Keon Coleman, who could still be great, by the way. Let's leave that conversation there. But Dwayne Carter was like the bonus.
Yep.
Are we going to live in a world, Luka, where the bonus is gone after 1 year?
It seems like it. I mean, doesn't speak well for you as a player, especially one that had the expectations of a Dwayne Carter when you're still in the game with, under 10 minutes left of the fourth quarter in Tampa, with what was taking place yesterday. And yesterday, of course, you might be listening Monday or Tuesday or whatever it is. Of course, we record on Sunday nights, just as a nice friendly reminder, but it's an absolute failure of understanding. And it's the classic thing too, though, just in general, where it felt as if this might have been one of the more heavy off seasons where the front office and the coaching staff they weren't being realistic with expectations. They were being hopeful. Mm-hmm. And hope can get you killed. Hope can be a problem if you really put too much weight into it. If you are banking on a lot of hope and unknown expectations to fill out and give you the things you need, and this goes well beyond football, people. You better understand that there is more than a 50% chance it's not going to work out exactly how you need it, for sure. But even in general, for the better, you need to make sure certain things line up. You don't need the stars to line perfectly, but having a lot of hope being the thing you're leaning on for success is not how you want to do things. You need to have proper fail safes in place. You need to have realistic expectations. You have to be grounded in understanding that what you're doing is high risk. And that's what they did. They went high risk hope. And that's just, Dwayne Carter is going to be, to me, the poster child for what happens, in my opinion, on Tuesday. I believe roster cutdown's Tuesday, right? Tuesday, 4:00
Yep.
Eastern.
Tuesday, 4 p.m.
Yeah. Okay. So on Tuesday, when Dwayne Carter is on that cut sheet, that will be the poster child of the hope that got you killed. That is what that is. And then on top of it all, like you put perfectly, he is that bonus piece of the Xavier Worthy trade situation. And it's so perfect that somehow, some way, you found yourself where you still have the wide receiver piece that you're comfortable with. It can progress. Keon Coleman could still be great, but the asset that you were supposed to have gained by doing what you did turned out to be an absolute failure. And it's harsh on a third round pick to say it's a failure, especially if they're not like just because they're not an impact player is not why they're a failure. No, they're a failure if you're cutting them after 1 year. You like cut after 1 year is only quote unquote acceptable for, a fifth and later, in my opinion. If you're 1 through 4, you should at least be serviceable through your rookie contract in some capacity. Obviously there's the special team dynamic, whatever it is. You should be serviceable. You should be able to play out your rookie contract, hit that NFL pension, and be something for whatever team that drafted you. And the fact that Dwayne Carter is not worth it, it feels like, and you went another route and you're going to just give up on him after 1 year because what you've seen is just clearly not even close to good enough. Yeah, you messed up. And Xavier Worthy, sure, I like the player. I think I like the player more so because of where he ended up, and that's also the problem. But you just, it's like that little win you just handed your rival on top of it now. And Dwayne Carter being cut is just that extra salt in the wound where you're like, holy shit, you really did let them win that trade. That's what that feels like. Has nothing to do with Xavier Worthy, has nothing to do with Keon Coleman for the most part. It strictly is what you gained out of working with the rival turned out to be an absolute failure and you screwed up. That's what that is. And an admission of defeat in that regard is absolutely a shit covered salt lick that no one wants to deal with. That's exactly what that is.
And, the Bills are the team that traded away from Patrick Mahomes to the Chiefs, and that's always gonna be with them,
Infamous.
but I will say, even with the benefit of hindsight, I don't know if I'm undoing that trade. The Bills traded down to the late 20s and got an all-pro cornerback back in 2017, not 2025, and Tre'Davious White, who was a pillar of this defense for the first 5, 6 years of his career, and then had enough assets the next year to trade up and get Josh Allen. I mean, there's not really a better pull there. If you're gonna admit, like, maybe we trade away from arguably the best quarterback in the history of the sport, so you're probably not gonna win that trade. But damn, we got Josh Allen, who maybe inarguably right now is better than Patrick Mahomes, at least, you know, based on last year, and an all-pro cornerback. The Dwayne Carter piece is like that's the Tre'Davious White piece. The Tre'Davious White piece kinda helps balance it out. And now it's just completely Keon Coleman, Xavier Worthy. What happens? We shall see. But it would have been nice, Luka. It would have been nice if in this draft, when they just kept going back to that defensive line board, they would have pulled the string on another wide receiver to put him in the pipeline because you know what? Keon Coleman might work out. Maybe this new receiver would work out too. Maybe Luther Burden on the Bills and Keon Coleman on the Bills could be like the new T. Higgins, and then the Bengals go back the next year and draft Jamar Chase anyway. Who knows? And the Bengals are certainly not the poster child for roster building. That's not what I'm saying. I'd rather be the Bills than the Bengals any day of the week.
Oh, yeah.
But it's frustrating. All right. Well, enough about that. It doesn't have to be a big deal. You can roll your eyes at it if you want to. I think Luke and I are on the same page. It's more about the larger picture. How did we get to the point where after all this offseason, Jordan Phillips is just guaranteed a spot? So realistically, before we move on to the game, what could it mean? It could mean there's an injury we don't know about. It could mean that, like, Walker, Sanders, Carter, so, Daquan Jones, Ed Oliver, one of those guys is hurt. We're going to find out tomorrow. They're going on IR for the first 4 weeks of the season, and that will explain everything. And then we're going to feel pretty dumb for the first 25 minutes of this show. Maybe there's a trade that we don't know about. I think if Dwayne Carter gets traded, brace yourselves for a Boogie Basham-like return where it's like Dwayne Carter in a 6 for a 7. That's really cashing in low on a third round pick that you had 3 more years of roster control, which is the Bills' way of saying we believe so little in this guy that he is not worth even seeing what he can develop into. One other idea I saw floated out there is maybe the Bills are moving off of Daquan Jones. Maybe the Bills, brace yourself, Luka, feel so good about what they've seen from the rookies that they feel like they don't really have a use for Daquan Jones anymore. I've seen some people say it could be like about 2 to 3 million in cap savings. But now then you get to a situation where it's like Ed Oliver and Pups and Jordan Phillips until Ogunjobi comes back. That doesn't really jive with me, but who knows? And then if you want to be the ultimate believer, maybe this means they're sending Ed Oliver and 2 first-round picks for Micah Parsons. Who knows? I don't think I would hold my breath on that one. But ultimately, there's a piece to this that is yet to be put into place that we should find out here shortly. We'll probably know by 4 p.m. on Tuesday. Luka, there was a game Saturday night, and boy, oh boy, was it the ultimate preseason is preseasoning when the Bills' third string tight end, Zach Davidson, was also the Bills' punter. And he actually uncorked a 68-yard punt, which was amazing. He was a punter in college, so it's not like he's never punted a ball before. This wasn't Matt Barkley. Ultimately, though, this was a very forgettable game, except for a couple major takeaways I had, and then I'm going to kick it back to you and see what you thought. One, Tyrell Shavers is making this team. Every time his number is called, he has made plays. There was a play last week in Chicago where it felt like it was Mike White, I believe, that threw it, where the ball was just a little past his outstretched hands. Shavers didn't come down with it. Otherwise, he's been Johnny on the spot every time his name's been called, and he's been stealing the show in camp. I think he's making this team. Two, interesting, Dane Jackson played almost the entire game.
Mhm.
That to me says either A, Tre'Davious White is not in danger of missing week 1, although Brandon Beam was pretty coy on that one. The other thing it makes me wonder is it possible, Luka, that Dane Jackson is not the preferred starter if Tre'Davious White's out? I know we've kind of been like, well, he has experience in the system. Okay, but how good is he? Is it possible that the Bills could look at someone like a Jamarcus Ingram, or and this one I find a little bit less possible, although we do still live in a world where Christian Benford just showed up and was like instantly great. Dorian Strong. Dorian Strong, the day 3 pick of rookie, where they're just like, you know what? We know what we have in Dane Jackson here. We have to dedicate a few too many resources to protect him on defense. We don't have Hyde and Poyer back there anymore. We don't necessarily have those resources to. We're going to see what's behind door number 3 with some other options. I just thought it was interesting that he played so much in a game that the people that were on the field really were not consequential at all. But those were my 2 big takeaways: is Shavers making the team, and Dane Jackson sure played a lot.
The Shavers one quick was funny. So I remember leading into the week, even it still felt like Shavers has been impressive in the preseason. Once again, I one of the conversations I was having, we've been joking around that Shavers was second team all preseason this season, stuff of that nature. And then it was still questionable though, because it's like, what does he contribute on special teams? A lot of guys of that nature who are filling those roster spots, we talk about it all the time. You hear it everywhere else. Generally, they need to really show something on special teams to be of value, to be on game day active rosters, as well as just being on the 53. So that question was there. Then he catches that one touchdown, initially ruled incomplete. And I didn't see much of the game. It shouldn't be a shock to anyone. It was on while I had friends over and stuff of that nature for a housewarming, but I was in and out of that room. My friends were enjoying the game though, and I was at least in the room to see that catch. As soon as that catch was caught and confirmed to be a touchdown, Josh, Tyrell Shavers made this game. It was that simple. It's like you can't have someone, even in a meaningless game like that, show that they're capable of doing something like that at a position, mind you, that is considered around the league on the weaker end, and say, you know what? He just put this on tape. We're going to see if we'll bring him back on the practice squad. That kind of individual, which funny enough, I remember having a conversation going into the game, not to go off on a tangent here, but it feels like a lot of times the bottom end of your roster is more of playing the game. who can survive on the practice squad without being picked up rather than who will not, most likely. That's what you're playing the ultimate game. It's not just the 52-man roster. You're playing the full practice squad as well, and you're kind of like, who isn't looked at as valuable around the league and who is looked at as potentially valuable around the league? Who is someone that is not long for our practice squad, and who could we just stash there because it doesn't feel like that there's a lot of rumblings needing that. Tyrell Shavers makes that catch. You bet your ass he'd be getting picked up the moment that he's cut. So he's probably, and by probably he's going to make this roster. From there, as you discussed, we go into the corner situation. The Dane Jackson snap count thing in a absolute crap game of preseason is a fascinating one. You hear all the talk about Dorian Strong, and in contrast to quite literally the first 20 something minutes of our conversation here, Josh, that would be a shock to the system. And it's like, holy crap, they're actually just trying something different because they don't value Dane Jackson enough. They haven't seen anything out of him that's worth a shit. It's like, you know what? Screw it. We are going to try this new thing. Now it goes against everything else because it's like you're trying out the rookie, but at least you have Jamarcus Ingram sitting there, which nothing special, but at least has put something on tape of meaningfulness to you recently. And I go back to the week 2 Miami game last year. I think it was the week 2, right? It was the Thursday night game that he had a big game. Yeah. It was, you at least have that game you can hold on to and be like, this guy can give us something if we really needed it. It's like, cool. That's fine. That can be your vet play. And then you have Dorian Strong, as you even said, it kind of has that Christian Benford vibe to it. It's like, oh, we seem to like what we're getting out of this guy, and screw it. It was a late round pick. What do you have to lose? It can't be worse than Dane Jackson. And honestly, I probably share that same sentiment because Dane Jackson is like, it's like melted vanilla ice cream. It's a treat, but it's not even something you want to even go through the process of trying to enjoy. Just get rid of it, wash it out, and try something else. It's not worth your time, right? That's what Dane Jackson truly is. So I like that idea, and I hope that that's kind of reading the tea leaves of what happened in Tampa. That is the end result. They're like, we don't value Dane Jackson enough. We put him out there for 60 minutes because we're most likely going to be going a different direction with Dorian Strong, Jamarcus Ingram, so on and so forth. So honestly hoping and praying for that to be the resolution of all of that. And I'm honestly, to tie it in a bow, I'm excited about the Tyrell Shavers thing, not because I think Tyrell Shavers is going to be the next stud for this offense, but I like that someone of his caliber who's been around for a while finally has done enough, even in meaningless games, to be like, you are too valuable to hit the streets anymore. You are progressing and you are too valuable. These other vets we brought in are not showing us anything. And you're, when given the opportunity, as little as it may be, are continuing to show up and do everything. And that's a cool thing to see happen on your team. And it's easy to root for. So I will be very excited if he truly does make the 52 and he does make game day rosters and he does get snaps and we see something out of that when the games actually do matter. Not just the one flash touchdown that we saw last year, like actually give him, maybe 2-3 targets if needed, if he's called upon and he does something out of it. It would be really cool to see that. But overall, seeing that catch, it's like, yeah, game over. You're on the welcome to the team, bud.
I've been trying to rack my brain coming up with something fascinating about this roster cutdown day. One idea that I heard floated out by Jerry Ostrowski, which by the way, if you guys have the appetite to take on another podcast, Jerry Ostrowski is fantastic at breaking down some of this Bills stuff. He does stuff with Joe Miller. He does a Bills show with Joe Marino and Jeremy White, Bill squad. So I highly recommend it. But his thought was when you look at what's going on with the depth of the Bills offensive line, which is Alec Anderson has been injured. Cedric Van Pangranger was injured all of camp, which is just such a bummer because it sure felt like he was somebody who could have been fighting for that first interior offensive lineman off the bench spot. And then Tylen Grable, who was their swing tackle last year, has been out. The Bills are in this weird situation where it's like their starting five is intact, but their entire depth is in shambles. Could they actually, instead of carrying 9 offensive linemen like they've done historically, only carry 8 with the thought process of you could let a Kendrick Green go through waivers and roll the dice that he's going to make it back to your practice squad as and be like your center, your backup center, but on your practice squad. Because I don't know that with those guys being out, like let's just say that we're in a world where Van Pran Granger has to start the season on PUP. And maybe Alec Anderson has to start the season on a PUP. I don't know if the Bills necessarily have 9 NFL quality offensive linemen. I mean, you could roster Chase Lunt, who showed a few things at guard, but he sure feels more like a practice squad body at this point in time. I do like Ryan Vandemark as a fourth tackle. I've always liked Richard Garage, but I mean, that guy's been a practice squatter. I think you're kind of forcing it there. And that would open up another roster spot for some other people. That to me really, and then other outside of that, what do you do with kick returner with Codrington? Outside of that, I think everything else is pretty locked up. I mean, there's been some conversation about are they going to carry 5 or 6 offensive linemen? It sure feels like Edufan Ulo Foshio is not going to be long for this world for the Bills. He has fallen way behind in the Bills power ranking, so to speak. And actually, it's Jimmy Carlo, who's been like the star of Hard Knocks that's been popping on special teams. Maybe he gets the 6th spot if they carry 6. Otherwise, the Bills are probably going to roll with, obviously Matt Milano, um, Terrell Bernard. There's a lot of momentum for Shaq Thompson, and then Dorian Williams and Joe Andreessen, and there's your 5 linebackers, and you're good to go. Um, I don't know, Luka. I feel like this is going to be a pretty eventless roster cutdown day, but what do I know? I didn't see Jordan Phillips showing up in my stocking on roster cutdown eve either.
The Jordan Phillips one really just threw the needed energy wrench in it because it outside of the, and well, I say needed, but I really didn't want to see it either. It's a weird way to put it, but yeah, there's very notable tiers in all the different position groups and where this roster truly stands that I don't think there's too much of a discussion to be had on those last 2-3 spots. Who is it up for? Is there a total of like 7 or 8 guys that really have some sort of an argument as to why they can fill that void and be that guy to be, player 50, 51, or 52 on this roster? No, I think it's there. I mean, the Jimmy Carlo thing, it's a thing. Yeah, it's like either him or Keontae Jenkins or, yeah, I mean, that's really what it's either him or Keontae Jenkins or neither. I mean, that's the reality. Like you just go 5 linebacker, you go Shaq. Why starting with Shaq? That's weird. Matt Milano, Terrell Bernard, Shaq, Dorian Williams, and Joe Andreessen, and just call it a day. I don't think anyone would bat an eye at that. You, of course, come out nickel so much that 5 linebackers, with 2 having Mike experience feels okay. It's not great, but at the same time, what else are you going to do? The defensive line is just going to be where my eyes are at, just because I want a confirmation now, Josh, as to why are you bringing in Jordan Phillips to fill that spot? Is it truly what we think? Dwayne Carter's just going to be gone, and or is there going to be a surprise in there? What do they do at edge as well? How deep do they go at edge, especially with on top of it all? It will be curious to see, let's say Javon Solomon makes the roster, but then all of a sudden Michael Hoyt's coming into town, week 7. How are they going to manage that? What is happening with that? Do they just go 4 because they're kind of already expecting Hoyt to be that 5th guy in the rotation? And as you even said, and I agree with, he will eventually become kind of that third next, that next man up from the starting 2 with Bosa and Rousseau. It will be interesting to see truly where that whole defensive line unit lands. And the Jordan Phillips was just enough of a sprinkle in there to kind of confuse things. But even going into safety to wrap this up, it's like there was
safety to wrap it up,
or lack thereof. I know you're doing the Taylor wrap thing there, but I'm making a tackle joke or the inability to wrap up.
There's some friendly fire by you on me.
There we go. Mm-hmm. It's really, there's no contest. There's nothing there. Like, feels like they'll go 4 deep. You got Rapp, Bishop, Cam Lewis, and DeMar Hamlin. They're all going to make this roster. That's just where it's going to land. And then from there, I guess the only thing I would see is what is going on with Jordan Hancock, but I don't know. I if you're going 4 deep at safety, I don't think that spot's there for him. And also Jordan Hancock, I don't know is necessarily someone that's going to be like you can't have him stashed on the practice squad. I know he's banged up also right now too. But it's just it's a pretty uneventful roster cut down overall. It'll be eyes on the defensive line. It'll be a classic situation, Josh, where it's check Twitter, see what it is. I'm going to just peer at the defensive line because I can already assume essentially where everything else is. And then all of a sudden I'll wait for a message from you if there's any shocking news. That's what I'll be at because I don't see where the surprise is on this roster. I can't forecast where that would be.
You and I generally tend to roll our eyes at the camp darling that gets cut and everybody's so surprised, like Andy Isabella a couple years back. Like, oh, they could have cut him. Well, pretty easily. Just wait for it to happen. But I think you and I will kind of be like with the masses if they cut Tyrell Shavers.
Oh yeah.
At this point in time, it's like, what are we doing? Everything you preach about develop, the best guy gets the spot. It's like, what has Elijah Moore done? And I want Elijah Moore to work out. Uh, I I hate the Bills wide receivers right now. I outside of Khalil Shakir, who's not even here, and I guess some excitement over Keon Coleman that I think still has a chance to be a pretty fun player for this team. I think this has been a neglected group, and I feel like the Bills, instead of appreciating the fact that they caught lightning in a bottle last year by having everybody eats actually work, and the fact that midseason they were like, "Whoa, it's not working. We should go trade for Amari Cooper," and then somehow Amari Cooper being terrible is like justification that they don't have to do anything else. It's like, no, you still felt the need to trade for Amari Cooper. So like this tells you that everything was not great as my microphone falls apart. But I don't know. I don't want to go off on a tangent on wide receiver. We're 47 minutes in. The Bills, like Lucas said, they're going to win 12, 13 games. They're going to be in the playoffs. They're going to probably make it to the second round. They're going to play a team like Baltimore or Cincinnati. We'll see if they can get through and beat the Chiefs and get to the Chiefs. And then we'll see if one time the Bills can make a play that the Chiefs seem to always make, whether it's Travis Kelce, Chris Jones, Pat Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Xavier Worthy. The one problem is for the Bills, it feels like it always has to be Josh Allen because 2 years ago it was Diggs who didn't make the play. Last year it was Dalton Kincaid who didn't make the play. 4 years ago it was Levi Wallace. So,
Oh,
you know,
Jesus.
it sure helps when you have good players outside of your quarterback, which the Bills do, but I don't know how many great ones they have. Luka, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, I mean, my final thought, just to maybe put a little positivity in the air, Josh, is the wide receiver or the receiver situation is an interesting one. I love you talking and just kind of going through again and reminding us all, right? It wasn't a panic, but just the recognition of, hey, we need a number one, going out and trading for Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper worked for all of the Titans game, which anyone works against the Titans for that matter, but it just didn't work. And they just got somehow so damn lucky that Mac Hollins and all his strange ways actually was a serviceable, dependable, just absolute dude randomly when you needed him at receiver. But then, I mean, in all due respect, he got an offer of actual money from somewhere else, so he went elsewhere. And now you're just like, oh crap. Well, we'll make it work anyways. We did it. It worked once. We'll do it again. It's a weird thing. What I will put the positive light on is Dalton Kincaid has felt like a subtle disappointment as of right now. The thing I say that very, very cautiously, only because he's shown enough where it's like you understand why he's a first round talent. You get it. He just needs to do it a lot more and do it consistently, of course. He's going into that kind of pseudo contract year. And players seem to have this natural ability to elevate themselves when all of a sudden there's financial opportunity at the end of the tunnel, Josh. Feels like this could really be a year where Dalton Kincaid might finally figure it out a little bit. when it comes to his play, as well as hopefully not catch an injury and have something happen that would hold him back a little bit. That's obviously something you can't project and whatever, but ultimately the vibe I get with Dalton Kincaid, just gut feeling how it works, is guys in contract years, when an extension can happen next season, somehow all of a sudden provide what they truly are and where their market value should be. And this is my ceiling, or approaching my ceiling. This is what I look like. And if we can get, 80% to 90% to Dalton Kincaid's ceiling this year, our receiver group will overall be better than what it was last year. And I mean that seriously, because Dalton Kincaid being a legitimate weapon in this offense would go a long, long way. It would just change the dynamic of how teams have to scheme for us so much more than what they used to, because you never truly needed to worry about downfield threats since, like, and I say downfield, and it's a weird one to say. Between the numbers, it's kind of, you haven't had to worry about between the numbers since Cole Beasley. And I'm talking like 2021 Cole Beasley. I mean, it's not we signed him back in 2023, and it's like you got a man who's reaching for his crutches and stuff, Cole Beasley. Getting that dynamic back will open things up. I love the idea of big slot Keon Coleman being something that could potentially be in rotation. It feels like the ideas are there. And if you can just get that Kincaid thing to not be hurt and actually be more towards his ceiling, because the money's at the end of the tunnel, and I will happily understand what his value is if he can show an entire season of it. That feels like something that I just get a good gut feeling about, Josh. So buckle up. If we can get a good Kincaid, we can at least be excited about this offense early on, late on, throughout the season, and just enjoy what a different looking receiving core looks like with that man leading the way at tight end.
Yeah, and I think that's a good way to end it too, because, it was a lot of negativity tonight. I'll wear that. I showed up in a bad mood with the Jordan Phillips stuff, but, ultimately this was one of the best offenses in football last year. The entire offensive line is returning. The MVP quarterback is returning. The Pro Bowl running back is returning. The top two pass catchers, Kincaid and Shakir, when he ultimately comes back, returning. The rookie from last year, Keon Coleman, is returning. So there's a lot of reason to believe they will be just fine on offense. And, I would predict that they probably are. I just am always greedy when it comes to pass catchers. But Luka, preseason is now officially behind us. Next time we talk, we will have a 53-man roster to talk about. We will be 1 week closer to the Bills-Ravens game. We will be 1 week out. And we may have announcement about a live show pattern we're going to add to the mix coming up in the future. But that is for next week. For Luka, I am Josh McCarty. We will talk to you next week on Bills Chat.